Hi, and hello. Welcome to Little Dead Aliens. I'm your host, Ben. And on this show, we talk about the X Files and then give horror movie recommendations based on X Files episodes. With me again today, Steve Mowry. Hello. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me back. It's always a blast. And I love talking about horror movies and X Files and smooshing them together because that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so do I, which I guess is why I do this. But
Yeah.
yeah, always fun to have you here. Always fun to have conversations with you. For people who don't know, you have two podcasts: the Comic Book Bear podcast, where you talk about comic books, and then the Bear Cave of Terror, which is where you talk about horror movies. I've joined you a few times now, so
hmm
yeah, happy to have you.
Yeah. I mean, anytime I think about a Scream movie, now I have to think about Ben because you are my Scream expert. And it's always
Yes,
a blast to talk about those movies with you, as well as other films that we've talked about together on the show. So, but yeah.
yes, mission accomplished. I want everyone to think about me when they think about Scream and
Yes.
Ghostface. I don't know if that's a healthy, uh, desire, but it's there nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Um, okay, so before we get into the episode, as a sort of get to know you question, last time we asked about some comics. This time, I would like to know of the movies that you've covered on the Bear Cave of Terror, which would you most like to watch with the X Files crew? And would you rather watch it with Mulder, Scully, and Skinner or the Lone Gunmen?
So I've been thinking about this, and I think there's, probably movies that are best suited for each of the characters individually. So thinking about Mulder, I mean, Mulder likes aliens, Mulder likes sort of odd, obscure kind of things. So for him, I think I would just watch Alien with him, to be honest. He's probably done enough about little gray guys. And so probably wants something a little bit more action packed, something that can kind of take his mind out of the horrible government conspiracy that's slowly crushing his soul and draining his will to live as he searches for the truth. So watching Alien with him, obviously. For Scully, however, she is much more intellectual when she approaches things. So I'm going to watch something that's not supernatural with her. I would go back and rewatch Fascination, the Jean Rollin film, the French film from 1980 that we covered, because I think that she would appreciate it being in French, and two, because it's filled with very sexy ladies. Um, maybe that's more of a Gillian Anderson thing, but also it's just very intellectual. There's nothing really supernatural that happens in it. It's grounded, I think, a little bit more in reality, even though it plays with fantasy. Um, for Skinner, God, I don't know, Critters. I don't think
Yeah.
we would be watching the movie much. I think we would be doing other things.
Uh,
And then the Lone Gunmen, as a group, I think they all kind of have different tastes, but I think we can all probably agree on the horror of Dracula. I think that they would be in a classic mood. Maybe, getting a Hammer film in there would be something everybody could enjoy. So I think we would all be talking throughout the entire movie anyway. So it would be just constant commentary while watching Christopher Lee on screen.
yeah. I think that, yeah, they would like that. And I don't know what it is, but you're 100% right that Skinner would love Critters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I picture that Skinner would probably just be into goofy, fun, ridiculous 80s stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but also we would probably be making out.
Hopefully.
Uh,
Okay. So let's get into what happens in the episode. This episode, I guess I didn't even say, I'm really bad about that. Today we're covering the episode Shapes, which is in season one. So in Shapes, we open with a rancher and he is checking on his cattle and something attacks his son. Um, the so basically these ranchers, it's like the dad and the son are sort of our protagonist, I guess. So the dad shoots at whatever is attacking his son. the next day, or maybe that same night, I guess it doesn't matter. They discover that it is a young native kid that was shot and killed. Um, and both the dad and the son are confused because they believe it was a wild animal. So Mulder and Scully are called in to investigate the murder of the native boy by the dad. They find out that there's a legal dispute going on between the tribe and these ranchers over like where their land ends and begins, which gives motive for the dad to kill this kid. So the son does talk about, he sort of goes to show Scully around, and he talks about how he gets the creeps sometimes, like something's watching him but not human. Mulder notices while he's out looking around the ranch that the foot tracks are different. Some look human and some don't. And he finds a skin, which he shows to Scully. And then he's, of course, immediately like, it's a werewolf, probably. um,
What else could it be? It has to be a
right.
werewolf.
There's no other explanation for this. And Scully in the car, she does say, Mulder, this is so odd about the skin, which is true. Like, it is odd. But she's sort of at, at least leaning more into the idea of like, this is a little weird. So maybe something weird is going on rather than just being like no science. So they then go to the reservation to look at the kid who's been murdered's body. They go first to a bar because they're told that's where the sheriff might be. They're looking for the sheriff. So no one in the bar will kind of talk to them because they're like FBI. So they find an older man in the back of the bar, and he sort of gives them the intel that they need. But he does say something to the effect of like, the FBI doesn't believe in us, so we don't believe in them. And Mulder says, I want to believe, which might be the first time he says that in the series, I think, which is kind of cool. And the only reason I brought it up, because obviously the poster and everything. So they find the sheriff, or the sheriff comes into the bar. The sheriff is Hawk from Twin Peaks. It's the same actor. I don't know if you're a Twin Peaks fan, but I'm a big Twin Peaks fan, and so we keep noticing these correlations between the two shows. So that's pretty cool. And Hawk is awesome in Twin Peaks. I don't know the actor's name because I'm really bad about remembering people's names. Mulder and Scully or Scully is, looking at the body because she's, can do that because she's a doctor. Um, has scars and like that look like an animal attack. He has canine fangs, like really big fangs, when they show it, which they sort of science off as like being something else. But they say, oh, that could explain why this person mistook him for an animal because they saw there was a lot of flashlights moving around. It was dark and they just saw like the teeth and thought, oh, it's an animal when it wasn't. So at one point, Scully sort of asked Mulder like about why he seems to be expecting to find all the evidence that they have been finding. And he brings out a file that he says is the very first X-Files, opened by Hoover in 1946, in which people were being killed and shredded by an animal. The animal was cornered and shot by police, but then a person there instead of an animal. So very similar to what has happened here. This started again in 54, in 59, in 64, in 78, and in 94, but goes back 150 years back to like the Lewis and Clark expedition. And Scully is just like, no one can change into an animal. That's sort of her take on the whole thing. So at the funeral, Mulder asks the sheriff if he believes in the shapeshifting, and he doesn't really give a real answer. Later that night, the rancher dad is out on the porch, and he is attacked by an animal and killed. The next morning, Gwen, who's the sister of the boy who died, Joe, is missing. And she was very angry because the son showed up to the funeral, and she was like, get the fuck out of here. Why are you here? Which makes sense. And but Lyle, the son of the rancher, is also missing, so they can't find them. Mulder follows a trail of hair and skin. Scully finds Lyle outside naked in the yard, their ranch, and takes him to the hospital. And this all happens so Mulder and Scully are split up, so one of them can be put into danger. So sheriff takes Mulder to see the older man, who then tells him about the first case of the Manitou, which is an evil spirit that can cause a person to change into a beast. And if you're attacked by one, you can become one. It can be passed through bloodlines. So they think if Joe had it, then Gwen also might have it. So they think that she probably killed the rancher guy. They find Gwen outside. I don't, this didn't make a lot of sense to me why she was outside. Like she was trying to steal one of their vehicles outside of where they were meeting. But anyways, so they find her and she's, really upset and she's like, I just wanted to get out of here, whatever. So Mulder calls the hospital to talk to Scully. The doctor says that she left with Lyle, the son. Um, but Lyle has his father's blood type, which could only be like found in his system, which could only be there through ingestion. So Mulder now knows that Lyle is the werewolf or creature. So Scully gets Lyle home. He's transforming in the bathroom. And then Mulder and the sheriff are rushing to the ranch. That's very dramatic because they're trying to get to Scully. Mulder sees that the werewolf, he sees it in the house. He shoots at it and the power is out because of course it is. This scene does feel very much like a horror movie where Mulder and Scully are now like searching the house for the werewolf. Um, and it's dark and like there's a lightning storm, there's a storm going on. So it's very good horror moment. They do shoot the werewolf eventually. Sheriff shoots him and they find that it's actually Lyle. They can't, Scully is confused. She doesn't really have an explanation for this. But of course, everyone else is like, oh, it's a werewolf. As they're leaving, the older native guy, he says, FBI will see you in about 8 years, which is creepy and ominous. Um, and that is what happens in the episode.
A lot of these moments here are pretty classic, I would say, werewolf film or werewolf media moments. There's unexplained murders, there's, beasts that are killed, and then there's actually a human body there. So, like, we thought it was a monster, we thought it was some kind of creature, but it turns out it's just some guy who's naked, who's attacking us or whatever. Um, Lyle, of course, gets bitten or scratched by Joe when he was attacking him. So of course
Right.
he then gets the infection or has the spirit passed on to him to become the werewolf. But also you have the wise, and this I think very specifically for American uh, horror movies that deal with werewolves or transformation. You have the wise Native American older gentleman who has a lot of knowledge about the history and about the spiritual nature possibly of what's going on. And then of course you've got that final confrontation at the end, and it's really perfect that at this moment the power has gone out at the house, so Scully
Mhm.
can't see anything, to see that Lyle has completely transformed into a werewolf. We watch the transformation. We see most of the transformation in the bathroom while what's happening. But Scully is just at the door going, Lyle, open up the door. And then something smashes through it. Somehow she gets away. We don't see that part.
Right.
But we do see later when Mulder and the sheriff come in and they all meet up and go searching the house for Lyle or for whatever's attacking them. And of course Scully is confused at the end. I thought there was a monster, or I thought there was like a big wild animal,
Right.
because on the ranch they do keep wild animals who have wandered onto the ranch, and there's a mountain lion there and a couple other larger creatures. So the idea, at least in Scully's mind, through most of this, is that one of those creatures had gotten out at some
Well,
point
right.
and had been responsible for the attacks. But as we all know, the cage is still intact. The mountain lion or whatever that had been captured a while ago never escaped. And so she's kind of left with, well, I don't know. Why would Lyle attack us? Why would any of this been the case? Why would he attack his own father? Like, none of that's answered.
Right.
And it's interesting that this is, the point of this episode is to kind of show this has been going on for so long, and it's been recorded by the federal government. The FBI investigating this for the past 50 years, that every so often something's happening. And it is potentially related to the family of Joe and his sister somehow. We don't really get all those details, but they're not important necessarily for this
Yeah.
because if the infection is passed on just by a scratch or a bite, that at any point it could have been another family. It could have been a family of ranchers that had the infection and passed it on to somebody on the reservation and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of ambiguity in why the native, the young native young man was infected and how much his sister knew. That's kind of left open. Clearly, she knew something, and she also had seen Lyle transform. So it's not really sure, did she see her brother transform at some point in the past? But she definitely saw Lyle, and that freaked her out, which is why I think that's why she was trying to steal a car and get away,
Right. Oh, yeah.
to just get away from the situation. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's really it's a pretty compact story, but it leaves a lot of questions unanswered, which I like. I like those X Files episodes. I don't necessarily need everything answered because it leaves it open to revisit. And I like that little line at the end where it's like, "I'll see you in about 8 years." Well, there's a possibility, hey, maybe X-Files will come back to this. Maybe, we'll have a follow-up story where this is tackled again. It's cool. And it also is one of those episodes where you just want to grab Scully by the shoulders and go, "Okay, lady. Look, you put Lyle in a bathroom. Lyle smashes out and he has claws and fangs. Like that
Yeah.
is not he's just looking a little wild. This is a
Right.
full-on transformation to something that's no longer human. Um how can you explain that easily? No, you cannot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe some of the stuff is real.
We also get some jump scares with like the mountain lion in the cage, which is cool. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
like in their rancher house, they have a lot of like animal heads,
Mhm.
and we get a lot of like zoom in on those, like the teeth of the animal head. So it's a lot of imagery to try to make us scared of wild animals, I guess. Um,
Yeah, it is a really good setting, I think, for this, which
yeah,
is cool. There's a lot of open land. There's the house itself it's big, but it's also claustrophobic. There's a lot of tight corners and dark rooms and um, you know, hardwood everything. And it's really neat. And also in terms of who's a bad guy here, there really isn't one. I mean, nobody's really a true antagonist. Everyone's kind of just going about their lives in whatever way. Yes, there's that legal challenge that's adding some animosity there, but nobody's openly like, I want to kill this person, I want to hurt that person. And that I think makes sense within like the whole werewolf mythos. And usually what we see is that it's tragic that somebody is transformed in that their normal personality is not one that would cause them to harm others or kill others. And we
right,
see that with Lyle because he's right off the bat, he's like, he and his father both feel really terrible about the fact that they killed this young man. And even Lyle goes further and says, like, it couldn't have been them. Like this doesn't seem normal that this would happen. We've never had this kind of attack before. They're not like that. We're not like that. Whatever. And then even shows up later to the funeral to pay his respects, which is not something that a bad person would do.
right,
Um, and so it's kind of just all around tragedy that these things are happening to them.
right.
To both the young native boy as well as Lyle. So
Yeah, and we'll get more into that because it's a lot of werewolf stuff has that in it too. But before we get into the werewolf stuff, I just want to talk briefly, I guess, about sort of the tropes and themes set around like Native American and indigenous culture. And we do see that in horror. A lot of the times it's very sort of insensitive and not great representation, especially look,
yeah.
back in the 70s and 80s. I think So the Amityville Horror, which is a book that came out in 1977, which is just a bunch of horseshit that is claimed to be truth, I think really started this trend because in the book, they go to the library and then they find out that their house was built on like native burial ground or something. I guess they needed something else besides the fact that like some person murdered his entire family in their home. They needed more than that. So they make up this story about how their house was built on Native American land. And then we see that, in Poltergeist. Pet Cemetery sort of does the native thing. Um, so I guess we have the Amityville horror to blame for this in a lot of ways, as well
Yeah.
as like the Satanic Panic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys, for that.
Yeah.
Um,
And, I
but
think a lot of that too, there was always, especially in film and in books, there was this, way of painting Native American history and spiritual culture and religion with a very broad brush that every tribe and every group felt the same way and believed the same things, and there's all this mystical magical stuff related to the land, and then also Native Americans are prone to cursing people and cursing land, and there's negative consequences for everything. So it's just I think that's just kind of been something that's in the background of a lot of film and TV and books throughout the 19th and 20th century. And then of course with horror movies, getting true horror movies where they mention it as like, oh, this is the reason, it's actually cursed Native American burial ground, or there was an ancient medicine man who like cursed something.
yeah,
If you, I think we talked about the Manitou briefly before recording that movie in the late '70s as well, where there's a medicine man who is reincarnated every so many years by possessing some unfortunate individual and then tearing themselves from their body and just wrecking havoc with this ancient native magic and all this stuff that is really disrespectful, I think, for
mhm,
a lot of for a lot of people, but also just sort of is a way of creating some kind of background buzz that a viewer or a reader could look at and say like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah,
yeah,
it's mysterious, we don't know, so yeah, of course, it's probably that. Some ancient native curse or whatever. And of course, the fact that it also plays loose with geography and
mhm,
history, where people actually could be. And I think we'll talk a little bit that when we talk about the difference between like a skinwalker and a Wendigo, and where the where the sort of the history and the ideas come from. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it was like that for a very long time, and I think you still have that. You still have those
yeah,
campfire story sensibilities when it comes to Native American culture and history, so
right. Well, it's very much just like we need a reason for spooky stuff to be happening, so let's
yeah.
do this. And like, it is Native American and indigenous stuff, but it's also like
Mhm.
voodoo, anything African, anything.
Yeah.
It culturally, I think in America, we just sort of decided whatever was the spooky thing of the time and like went with it. And it's never great.
No.
Uh, so, I, you know, it's hard to watch sometimes. I think the X Files episodes and I think X Files as a series generally handle like native and indigenous people stuff okay, and, it's
Mhm.
certainly okay for the time, like, in this episode, we do see them at least, acknowledge the idea that, like, these people are not trusting of the American government and have every right, and it's reasonable for them not to.
Yeah.
So at least we see that, and all
Yeah.
the native people are played by native actors, which is cool. Um, so, yeah, I did wanna talk about some representation that is maybe better. It's a recommendation. So I'm currently reading a book called Never Whistle at Night, which is The subtitle is An Indigenous Dark Fiction Anthology. It's
Mhm.
edited by Shane Hawks and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. It's a very long name. Um, eh, and I know Stephen Graham Jones is a writer that a lot of people like. I haven't read any of his stuff, but I know that he is well respected, and a lot of people enjoy his books. And he wrote the introduction. So this is just a cool book of like a bunch of sort of retelling of indigenous like spooky stories. So it's really cool. It's called Never Whistle at Night. I wanted to mention that.
I don't have uh, a good library of native written work, unfortunately, but that sounds really good. That sounds really much up pretty much up my alley, so I'll go check that out as well. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, same. I think that's what one of the reasons that I really wanted to get it. Like saw it online, someone mentioned it and like immediately like add to cart because that sounds so cool. Um,
Absolutely.
we were talking a little bit about Blood Quantum before
Mhm.
we started, which came out in 2019. This is like a zombie movie. Uh,
Mhm.
I know you said you really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's a unique take on the zombie infection or on, the living dead infection where, a native community finds that they are essentially immune to what's causing creatures as well as people to come back to life and be horrible, cannibalistic, flesh-eating monsters. Uh, and it's really an interesting take on sort of the idea of blood determining status, determining worth, and things like that. So, blood quantum itself as a concept was one used against native people, people of color for centuries, past couple of centuries, and especially in North America, where it became, legal status, depending on how much percentage of a particular, ethnic group that one was. And, the blood quantum idea is pretty neat to sort of then put that on top of a horror film where that is actually important in protecting against the breakdown and the chaos and the horror of what's happening to everybody else.
Yeah, I like the concept a lot. I didn't really like the movie a whole lot. For one thing, I think it does what a lot of zombie movies do is where it's just a lot of people yelling at each other for no
Yeah.
reason. It's like, why why are you guys upset? And like you're taking it to 100 like immediately, and it's not something I enjoy. But it was an okay movie, and I know a lot of people like it. That's why I wanted to
Yeah.
watch it for this episode. Um,
Yeah.
I also watched a while back, well, in 2022, there was a movie called Slashback, which is like, I believe, set in Alaska, an indigenous
Hmm.
group in Alaska, and it's a bunch of like young girls, and they're like fighting monsters. It might be aliens. I don't remember what specifically the monsters are, but they're fighting monsters, which is really cool, and I enjoyed that. And then Prey in 2022 as well, which is the Predator movie where he shows up and then the native girl has to like fight the predator, which was also really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Slashback I saw when it came out. I thought it was a lot of fun because it kind of had a bit of a feel to Monster Squad for me because the heroes are all kids.
Mhm.
Um, and it takes place, I believe it takes place in Nunavut because it's a Canadian film. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
up sort of like, central North Arctic. But yeah, I think it has something to do with aliens or like alien creatures out of a meteor, and they start absorbing people, turning people into sort of
Yeah,
people and
you're right.
creatures. Like there's the polar bear. There's like all sorts of really cool stuff, and I think the visuals in it, the effects are pretty fantastic. And the kids are great. Like
Yeah.
they all start out as whiny, annoying kids, and then you're just sort of like, yeah, I like seeing them kick ass. So cool.
Yeah,
They seem to do a lot better than the adults in this movie.
right, for sure. Okay, I'm glad you're here because obviously remember nothing about that movie, and you can fill in my memory gaps. But I do remember really liking it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anything else you would like to mention?
Um, I think I mentioned it briefly. It's not a good movie. It's the Manitou, but
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like the best thing that you can watch to not do when it comes
Mm.
to to the idea of native mysticism or native like spiritual beliefs and things like that. It's all ugh, it's yeah, it's terrible. Medicine Man versus Medicine Man. Like it's terrible. But it does hold an interesting place in garbage exploitative cinema of the 70s. So, you know. Also Poltergeist 2 is famously, again, uses uh native spirituality as a way to fight back against the preacher and the ghosts who have infected that both Carol Ann and her family and the original site where the house uh, was on top of. But uh, yeah, I mean those are kind of like bad examples
Mm.
of using Native American tropes and spirituality and beliefs to make your horror movie work. So I mean, you can watch them, and I think they hold places in people's hearts, I think, because of maybe, childhood memories or maybe they just really like bad movies. But those whole those are good examples of bad examples.
Right. Yeah.
That's a way to say
Uh,
it. But
yeah.
Prey, I will second you on Prey there. I think Prey was such a fantastic film. Having it from the perspective. And I think originally when they were going to show it, or when it was originally being, drawn up and conceptualized, that they wanted to have it fully in, I'm not sure which language, but fully in one of the native languages
Mm.
of that area. So it'd be even more realism to it. But they changed that because I think it was either too difficult or they didn't think they would connect with audiences as well.
Mm.
So.
That would have been really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
but they
yeah.
do have I think you can watch it with a dub track, which would be really cool. I can't recall right now which language that would be, but
uh,
it's kind of neat to see something like that
I'm
as one of the ideas for it.
Yeah, that is a cool idea. Yeah, I think as horror fans, we sort of have to, especially with stuff from the 60s, 70s, 80s, we just have to kind of watch things with the understanding and the responsibility of saying, like, this stuff is not okay.
Mhm.
And maybe we can divorce ourselves from that and still enjoy it. And maybe we can decide, like, I'm not going to partake in this. But yeah, I think it's important as fans to acknowledge that and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, as a genre, sometimes we do things that are not okay." So,
Yeah.
yeah, um,
And it is fiction. It's fictional horror, but sometimes you got to look at where the ideas are coming from and sort of take a step back and say like, okay, well, is this yes, it's horror, yes, it's fantasy, but is how you're getting to that point, is your impetus, is your sort of like your little, okay, this is your jumping off point. Is that kind of a little bit disrespectful, a little bit, you know, misusing somebody else's culture in order to make this? I, you know, how you feel
right,
about that may change, but yeah, that is something to kind of look at, especially now when there's a lot more available out there for
right,
people.
yeah, for sure,
That isn't disrespectful and
yeah,
still maintains that horror vibe.
yes, yeah. Um, okay, so let's just get into some werewolf movies. Uh,
Yeah.
do you wanna what is sort of your history with werewolf stuff and werewolf movies and
So I love werewolf movies. When I was a little kid, I was a huge fan of the original Universal monster films. So Dracula, The Mummy, and of course the Wolfman, Bride of
Mhm,
Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon. But the Wolfman was something that always stuck with me. I always really enjoyed the concept of this man transforming into a hairier, more beastly version of himself. And I didn't really understand how that really also may have affected or been affected by my sexuality
right,
eventually. But it is something I've always loved that concept. Where you have these transformations, you have people who are on either side of the situation. You have the unwitting victim who then becomes the monster, who becomes the antagonist, and sometimes you have people who are fully aware of their monster status and are trying to find a cure or control it, very much like in an Incredible Hulk kind of way, where you have the base person who's just riding shotgun essentially on the monster, but then sometimes the monster recedes and it's the main person again, and they have to do what they can to keep others around them safe, or fight up against an even more evil version of the werewolf monster. Um, but there was a lot of stuff in the '80s which I found really cool. So growing up, there were a lot of TV shows that would show this. There were movies that came out in the '80s that also kind of really pushed the Wolfman or the werewolf mythos. Um, and I went back and I rewatched some TV series that I had watched at the time. One of them, very famous one, also very famously, very quickly canceled, was the series Werewolf. It lasted one season on Fox back in 1987, 88, where a college grad student gets bitten and turned into a werewolf. And every episode, he kind of goes from town to town, like the old Incredible Hulk Bill Bixby show, going from town to town trying to hunt the werewolf that turned him. There's an episode called Skinwalker, where there is a Native American group in this neighborhood. It's not on a reservation, but there's a group of Native Americans who are all friends and know each other that go to this local bar, and one of their own ends up dead, killed by what looks like a wild animal, but everybody else knows is a skinwalker. And then, of course, the main character Eric shows up and is like, "Hey, I heard that there was an attack." Knowing in his mind, he thinks it's the werewolf that he's pursuing, but the other people there at the bar kind of understand, oh, this must be a skinwalker who's attacked this man. And he enlists the help of an older native gentleman who also thinks that there might be a cure. He knows a medicine man who might be able to come down and do a ceremony and remove the werewolf curse, remove the skinwalker curse. uh, but by the end of the episode, that's not possible, so Eric kills the other bad werewolf slash skinwalker, who is one of the other members of that neighborhood, and is told that no, the Skinwalker story is just a story. There is no cure, and then he moves on to another town. There was also a Friday the 13th episode that very directly went into the Wolfman. There's a college student who's a film student, fascinated by the film The Wolfman from 1941, and he wants to be a werewolf so bad. He's just like, he even goes out after his nightly viewing of The Wolfman that's playing at like a local cinema, and he takes a dog's paw and he scratches his chest while he's out in the moonlight in an alleyway right behind the movie theater, while some of the assholes who also go to that same film class film him doing that, because they are jerks, but also he's a little bit nutty. Um, so, he's humiliated by this, comes across a cursed object, because that's the plot of every episode of Friday the 13th, the series. And this one is a movie camera that allows him to watch full clips of the Wolfman and then superimpose them on people that he films, and then those people get murdered by the Wolfman. And the payoff would be, after he commits three of those murders, then the Wolfman from the camera will then come out and turn him into a werewolf. And that does happen, and of course ends poorly for everybody. But that episode is very interesting in that there's probably about 15 minutes worth of footage from the film The Wolfman
Hmm.
interspersed throughout that episode. They must have gotten the rights, or the rights must have been really cheap for that, because really they show 15 full minutes of the movie in this episode that's only 47 minutes, 45 minutes. So yeah,
That's pretty
really
awesome.
interesting. But this is around the same time. We're looking at 1987, 1988, 89 as I'm a kid. And there's a couple other things that come out at the same time. You've got Monster Squad that drops in like 87, I believe. and that one features a wolf man. You've got Teen Wolf, the movie that drops in '85, and that one, it's Michael J. Fox turns into a werewolf, and his family's a bunch of werewolves, and they even had cartoons that came out of that spun out of that movie. And this is the original, so for anybody under the age of 40 who's listening, there was a Teen Wolf franchise before the Teen Wolf franchise that came from MTV in the 2000s or 2010s. So this was the original that it was based on, and it was a comedy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those werewolf in popular culture. Sometimes played for laughs, sometimes played serious. You had some great movies that came out in the '80s that were werewolf movies, and some that were Oscar winning. So there's a lot. I think the '80s was a good time to be growing up if you liked werewolves, because there was a lot. So
Yeah.
that's how my fascination started with it.
Yeah, I've never been super big into werewolves. It's one of the like subgenres that I always feel like I need to watch more stuff of, but never have. As I've said many times on the show, like I wasn't really allowed to have any like viewing of like scary stuff growing up. I think Teen Wolf was probably the first thing that like made me aware that werewolves were a thing.
Hmm.
And I remember we watched those movies a lot, and the dad in Teen Wolf was, interesting to me. But
Yeah.
I think as a like a preteen kid, anything werewolf related, I knew someone was gonna be naked, usually a dude at some point, and that made me interested in watching it, for obvious reasons. But, in a as a, you know, kid figuring out what's going on with their body, it was somewhere where I knew that that was probably gonna happen. And also, like, the idea that I think they were kinda scary to me because, first of all, I didn't really see scary stuff very often, but also, like, there was something in me that I didn't really like and felt
Mm,
monstrous, and that's what's happening to these people as well in the movies, and there was, like, a relation there that really scared me, that
mm,
made me cause some self-reflection that I didn't like. Um, so
yeah.
I remember being very intrigued by the idea of werewolf movies, and, like, I know Wolf from 1994 with Jack
Hmm.
Nicholson would have been one of those that, like, we didn't watch, but it would be on TV or something, and maybe my parents would be watching, and I would, like, stop in the living room to, like, try to watch as much as they would allow me to, um, and really intriguing me. So, yeah, I think I would assume most people who are queer would have similar relations to
Hmm.
and ideas around werewolf movies. Are there any that, like, really scare you? Do werewolf like, or are werewolves scary to you?
No, I think that's the interesting thing, and absolutely, hearing you talk about it, that is generally what I've experienced as well. Growing up watching werewolf movies and really enjoying werewolf movies is that there's a part of me inside that somehow identifies with that. It's repressed, but sometimes it comes out and it'll be destructive if anybody finds out. Obviously, the gayness. Uh, and the characters in werewolf movies a lot of times looking for a cure, looking for a way not to be. I mean, obviously, when I was young and realized that I was gay, like I needed that to be not the case. That was bad. I needed to hide that and somehow cure that. That didn't obviously didn't happen, and I changed my mind. Very much on going into life, that it was not bad and needed to be cured. But werewolf movies are still fascinating to me, even though they're not necessarily scary. There are werewolf movies that have scary moments. There's a lot of jump scares that you'll find in
Mhm.
werewolf movies because you have big scary creatures, and big scary creatures are always fun for jump scares. But what I find maybe the most intriguing about werewolf films is the transformation part itself, because it's a way for special effects and makeup artists to really shine, because you have some amazing transformation effects through the years that have been developed, and it's really cool getting to see those done well. There are some bad ones, There are absolutely some terrible makeup jobs and terrible transformation, special effects and things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a great way for these artists and these effects groups to really and these teams to really use their creativity for some really fun stuff. And I love that in a horror movie that goes for that goes for the creature design, the werewolf design, and does just sees how far they can push it, see how smoothly they can do a transition. I mean, obviously things changed with CGI and now that's a little bit it's different, it's less practical effects.
Yeah.
But still ultimately in most of these movies, you have to have a good looking werewolf outfit because if you have all CGI werewolves, it looks really stupid.
Right.
And so, a lot of times, even if you do use a lot of other computer effects, you do still need to have a really cool monster design, a really cool werewolf design. And I love that. That to me is just sort of like, okay, awesome. They did a good job. And there's even some bad movies with some really good
Yeah.
werewolf costumes and transformations um, that for me just kind of make it worth watching
Right.
because it's cool and fascinating. Love that stuff.
Yeah. I think that's a good segue because I think the reason we keep making and watching and enjoying werewolf movies, because most of them are plot wise basically the same, is it's all about the transformation and the
Mhm.
effects. And I think as horror fans, we really love that and gravitate towards watching really cool effects. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about our 5 favorite werewolf movies. Before we do that, we wanted to do some honorable mentions, and one of my honorable
Mhm.
mentions is only because of the transformation, which is a
Mhm.
show called Hemlock Grove. It started
Yeah.
in 2013. There were 3 seasons. I don't think I finished the show, but I remember the transformations being really gross because it's like the werewolf comes out of the person's mouth and like sheds the person as like a weird skin. And it's very gross and graphic, but cool. Um, but yeah, I think the transformation is like the big reason to go back to a werewolf movie.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so honorable mentions. I guess I can just do mine and then you can do yours. Do you want to do
Yeah,
that one?
sure. Yeah.
So Hemlock Grove, I wanted to mention Trick or Treat, which is one of my just favorite horror movies of all time. It's an anthology, so this isn't really a spoiler if you haven't seen it because you can kind of guess which story is the werewolf story, but there are werewolves in it. Um, and then there's a Creep Show special from 2020. I think Shudder did a Creep Show like animated series, which I didn't watch a lot of. And maybe it's live action too, but they did it like a Christmas special in 2020 and it's werewolves and it's like about a group of people trapped in like the basement of a church or something for a meeting and then werewolves attack. And it was a lot of fun. It's short, but if you are looking for Christmas werewolves, it's fun. Um, and also, our friends at the Mix Reviews, which is a podcast about movies, they did an episode about werewolf movies, which I have been listening to. I was listening to last night in bed, which is really cool. So if you want to learn more about, they have a guest on. His name is Craig. I forget his last name. Sorry, who wrote a book about werewolf movies. So it's a really good listen.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I have some honorable mentions as well. Again, probably the Underworld series. If you
Mhm.
like those sort of like 2000s era action fantasy, supernatural fantasy movies, it takes more of like an action take on werewolves, where they're all just kind of anarchists or socialists or something who live in opposition to the more fascist vampires. And so they're kind of like
Mhm.
freedom fighters, but they're also kind of jerks. But their transformations are very CGI, but they do some really cool stuff in that series. And it's pretty fun, more action oriented rather than scare or shock. The Howling, of course, just the first one. Let's ignore all the rest of the movies in the series, but the original Howling film with Dee Wallace is beautiful. It's wonderful. It has some incredible moments, some very disgusting werewolf transformations that are pretty incredible for their time. Silver Bullet, which was based on a Stephen King short story, has a young Corey Haim in it and a crazy Gary Busey. because of course it's Gary Busey, um, with a really fun sort of there's a secret werewolf kind
Mhm.
of premise in it, and that one's always pretty fun. And then this is one that I only recently saw. It came out, I believe, in 2021, maybe, called The Wolf of Snow Hollow.
Mm.
And this was one where it takes the premise of a werewolf attacking people in a small, snowy town and changes your sort of perspective on it because your main character is the sheriff who's slowly losing it. He's really giving into his alcoholism, and everybody else is trying to keep things together while bodies start, continue to pile up. And it's a film that gives you hints of a werewolf and then gives you full visual of the werewolf, but there's a major twist in it, and I absolutely love that. And it's become, one of my go-to sort of fun horror films in that it's not really a traditional one, although it does have werewolf. So
Mhm.
those I think are my good honorable mentions. And then of course I mentioned already Monster Squad, just because it's fun, but your mileage may vary. If you're okay with hearing the F slur come out of kids, I guess if you teach junior high today, you probably hear that quite a bit. But
Mm.
it's very much a product of the late '80s. So, but
Got
still
it.
fun, still fun to watch.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen that. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I should watch that.
be prepared.
Okay. Well, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so let's just get into it. I guess we could just go one at a time. I didn't put mine in any kind of order. I just picked
Yeah.
5 that I like. So my first pick is gonna be American Werewolf in Paris from 1997. I I feel like I'm trying to, like, garner a respect amongst horror fans, and I'm not doing a good job because this is on my list, but American Werewolf in London is not. Um, but I'm a big fan of '90s and 2000s horror. It just, like, hits a sweet spot for me, and this is, like, quintessentially '90s horror. It just does all the things that I want a horror movie to do. It opens with like a scene of some unrelated character running from something, and we don't know why that's going to come back in the third act, which I think every horror movie should do. The opening scene is also like he's being attacked, and they're like cutting back to like a church where like a choir and the organ is singing. Uh, and it's storming, just very quintessentially horror. It doesn't take itself very seriously. It's a very dumb movie in a lot of ways, um, but it's a lot of fun, and I watched it again for this episode and really enjoyed it. Not planning to put it on my list just to watch it, but yeah, I don't know. It's fun. It's just a fun, dumb movie.
Well, I know that this will not come as a surprise to you, but my number one on my list is An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah,
For the reason that it really is an example of brilliant filmmaking, has one of the best practical transformations on screen for 1981, and it came out in the same year as two other horror movies related to wolves or werewolves. It
right.
came out the same year as The Howling and Wolfen. Both
Mhm.
of them are considered kind of part of the werewolf mythos, although Wolfen's a little different. But American Werewolf in London, great cast, funny, dark, like really dark humor in there. It does play off of zombies as well. So if you're a zombie fan, there's zombies in there who are wisecracking and kind of funny, and there's some really great moments with them. But the werewolf itself is pretty horrific, and it does not shy away from jump scares involving sort of wolf creatures and attacks and things like that. It's very bloody, and also very emotional. So I love that one. It's a classic for a reason.
Right.
Oscar nominated, Oscar
Yeah.
winning, I believe. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a great movie. I'm not gonna deny that. I'm not gonna argue that with anyone. I just would prefer to watch in Paris because
the
'cause I'm a
Paris
'90s
one.
kid. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
But my next one is The Howling from 1981, uh,
Yeah.
which I watched for this episode and really enjoyed, and also feel like is the best, like, watch along for the, Shapes episode just because And this one, a reporter is, well, she's a newscaster, right? Yeah, she's a newscaster and she is helping law enforcement find a serial killer. And then she goes to this retreat because she's like, traumatized, obviously. But at the retreat, it's sort of this like big ranch type land. And they're like, the werewolves are killing cattle, which happens in
Mhm.
the Shapes episode. But the howling is really, I don't know, it's fun and kind of stupid also, but it's weird because, like, every transformation is different. Like, every
Yeah,
werewolf, and, like, it's just I don't know, it's really wild, but I had a good time watching it.
yeah. I I agree. It's definitely not one of my favorites, but we did cover it. We covered that and American Wolf in London on the podcast on Bear Cave of Terror. And it's fun comparing those two because there's a lot of really cool equivalent moments that
Mm.
one does better than the other. And it's kind of a toss up which one you end up being more of a fan of,
Yeah,
depending on when you see it or what kind of transformations you enjoy from your from your werewolves.
yeah.
But yeah, that's good. Well, my number two is Ginger Snaps. And I absolutely adore this Canadian film. It's very modern in the sensibilities that it presents on screen. These are two sisters who are kind of, social outcasts growing up outside Winnipeg. So there's not really much to do. There's not really much way for them to get out. And of course, the older sister ends up bitten by a werewolf and starts transforming. And there's a really cool metaphor with puberty and menstruation, kind of becoming a woman, but in a very monstrous way. And it's a fun relationship film with these two sisters, one who's trying to find a cure and also, help her older sister, but then her older sister who's realizing, hey, now I've got power and using that power to change the social dynamic that she operates in is really cool. And I love the story. The acting is fantastic. They're just so much fun. And it's definitely one to revisit over and over again. There are two sequels. Again, your mileage may vary on those two sequels, but the first one is fantastic.
I agree, and that is my next pick too, Ginger Snaps. Yeah, this one's just a good movie. You and I talked on Bear Cave of Horror about Jennifer's Body, and it gets compared to that a lot because there are similar themes. It also has, which is something I think all horror fans appreciate and love, it's got really strong like fall vibes. They're
Mm,
all like big cozy sweaters all the time. The transformations and stuff are really gross. There's a lot of
yeah.
really gross
Yeah.
stuff in these that you probably wouldn't expect if you're like, oh, a teenage girl turns into a werewolf. I don't think you would expect it to be as gross as it is. But
Yeah.
it's also, yeah, just good.
Yeah.
The sequel is like set around Christmas too, so you can watch it during Christmas.
Oh, Christmas film.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
um,
Um,
so my next one is The Wolfman, the original Wolfman from 1941. Larry is visiting Europe, I guess, and he gets bitten by a wolf while he is trying to save a woman who's he finds in the woods. And unfortunately, he does defeat the wolf. He kills the wolf with his steel tipped cane, but he's bitten as well. So he ends up transforming into the Wolfman a couple times, and there's a body count there. And eventually, he goes to attack his fiancee, and his friend has to kill him again with the same cane that he has. So it's definitely tragic. It's an example of early transformation special effects, and it's a classic. It's a really classic tale. Yeah, it plays a little bit insensitive on gypsy culture, Roma and Sinti culture because they're brought up a lot. Bela Lugosi makes an amazing appearance here, but it's just very it's just classic for a reason. And I think that was one of the reasons why I fell in love with the Wolfman or the werewolf genre because of this movie. So it's it's my number three.
nice. I haven't seen this one. I need to. I watched like 5 or 6 werewolf movies for this episode because, like I said, I haven't watched a ton. And I think one of the issues has always been that like they're all very similar titles. They're all very
Mhm.
similar plots. So it's hard to know which is which. And it's like
Right.
my brain just like sort of like can't compute, abort. Um and so I just don't watch them. So I need to just go back and like sort of make a list and watch them. And I do need to watch that one. Um Next for me is Dog Soldiers from 2002. This is about a group of soldiers who are doing like a war game type thing, and they find another group of soldiers that are also participating, and they've all been like shredded and killed, and then they fight werewolves.
Yeah.
I like claustrophobic movies, and this one is sort of that. They're kind of stuck in this cabin a lot of the time fighting werewolves. This one leans more action, but is also just a fun werewolf movie. Have you seen this one?
I did a long time ago when it came out, and, it was one that I watched with a bunch of friends when we would do our Friday night movies, and, yeah, it's definitely cool when you get a bunch of guys hanging around watching soldiers and werewolves.
Yeah,
It's a good combo for a
right.
fun night, fun movie.
It is perfect for
Uh,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So my next one, this is again a little bit more recent. It's from I believe it was 2021, 2022. It's called the Werewolves Within, and I believe it's based on a game, but it is one of my favorites just because of how much fun it has with the concept of who's the mystery werewolf.
Mhm.
Where you have a group of eclectic, wacky people in a bed and breakfast essentially in this snowy mountain town where you have a cop, you've got a mail carrier, you've got the owner of the bed and breakfast, you've got a bunch of other people that are there, and they start dropping like flies because someone one of them is a werewolf and is killing going through and killing people. And a lot of the fun in this movie is the mystery, who is actually the werewolf, and also uh, everything else in it. There's such a great sense of humor about the gory deaths that happen. The bodies that they find are messy,
Mhm.
but it is a ton of fun. And it's the kind of movie where even when you find the reveal, you still come out of it with a big smile on your face because it's it's goofy and funny and gory and all the things I love from a fun horror movie. So.
Yeah, I really like that one too. It's a lot of fun. I almost put it in my honorable mentions, but
Mhm.
yeah, this one's fun.
Yeah.
I like I mean, I love a good murder mystery. So the werewolf movies that are more like a whodunit of like who's the werewolf. I want to watch more of those, but this one's yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For me, my last one is called Wer. I don't know where were from 2013. This is sort of French movie, but not really. This one is about it opens with a family who is killed by some kind of animal, and there's a like sort of reclusive man who has some kind of medical condition where he is just very big and very hairy, and his lawyers are trying to determine that he could not have killed these people, and one of them is like an animal expert, so they're all English speaking. They're British and American for some reason in Paris defending this guy, which doesn't make just don't think about it too much. But it's a very interesting take on werewolves because it sort of tries to science everything away as it just being this medical condition. But eventually just something happens and like all hell breaks loose, and then there is werewolf killing people. But yeah, this one was a lot of fun. I think it would be interesting for people who are into werewolf movies but are sort of sick of the same old thing because it feels a lot like a found footage movie too because there is like footage that they're watching a lot like on computers or and like CBT footage and stuff, and it does show that a lot in the movie. The way it's shot is just feels found footagey, if that's a word. So I just watched this and it was fun, so I wanted to put it on the list to recommend. Yeah.
Cool. I'll check that out. Um, and then my last one, and I think I've already mentioned this before, is Teen Wolf. And I think this is on here more for the nostalgia, because it's one of those movies that I've always really enjoyed since the first time I saw it, and you know, over the past 40 years since it came out, I have seen it. I don't know how many dozens of times. It was one that I used to watch all the time, and it's Michael J. Fox at the height of his fame with was it uh, Family Ties? I guess that was the sitcom
Mhm.
that he was on. So playing a high school kind of, he's not even a nerdy kid. He's on the basketball team and he's okay on the basketball team. But when he turns into a werewolf, when he goes through that change for the first time, he becomes a star basketball player. And then the actual transformation becomes something that he can control. And he just goes full out werewolf all the time, exposing like just as a werewolf to the world, so everybody kind of sees him as this monster, but a cool monster who's really awesome and is great with girls, and is just a star basketball player. And it's kind of a funny reverse werewolf story in that he leans on being a werewolf too much, and people his friends start to resent him. He starts becoming kind of a jerk, and then realizes, you know what, I don't need to be this werewolf to shine, and has to dial it back and be his old self again, which is just it's so ridiculous. It's such a funny, silly movie, but it's definitely one of those teen comedy movies that was everywhere in the 80s about like teens trying to be cool and
Mhm.
coming up with some kind of thing that makes them cool. In this case, he actually becomes a werewolf.
Yeah.
And his dad in that, of course, yeah, kind of cute. Although I do have to say the werewolf makeup for his dad was a little bit more, I would say, what's that, like more Shaggy Dog than anything else, less
Yeah.
werewolf and more sort of like, oh, he's just like a really cute Malamute or something. Like,
Yeah. That's true.
yeah.
I don't We watch those movies a lot. I don't remember anything about the sequels and the plots of the sequels, and honestly, I haven't watched it since I was a preteen probably. So, like, I just remember the werewolf dunking and stuff and thinking that was just
Yeah.
really cool. So
Yeah. Well, in the sequel too, it's Jason Bateman who plays, I guess, the cousin, and he also becomes a star basketball player as a werewolf,
oh,
and it's really silly. But there was a whole cartoon series that was really fun that dealt with the family, and had an
well,
extended
yeah,
family, and then of course Boof and Styles were main characters in that one too, the friends, and just one of those wacky, silly '80s cartoons that just was everywhere. Um,
yeah,
but very different, very, very different feel to the remade series that came out from MTV in the 2010s, because that one was serious, had crazy special effects, and yeah, really expanded the mythos of werewolves and werepanthers and fox spirits and all sorts of things. Like it was yeah, well beyond that.
mm, haven't watched that. Has it did it end or is it still going?
It did. It had five seasons and then a movie. So it did have
Oh,
a sort of like a reunion movie. But it did give us Derek and Styles as a gay shipping fan fiction classic couple. So
okay. Do they play basketball?
no, lacrosse.
What? Okay.
It was all about lacrosse this time. But
What?
yeah, it's a fun show. Like it is a good show. It's
Yeah,
very, it's very sort of 2010s teen drama. So
yeah,
kind of, prepare yourself for that, but it's fun. It's got some great moments. It's got some good scary bits. There's a lot of cool transformations, tons of werewolves. Everybody's a suspect kind of situation
got
where
it.
there's like a mystery bad guy each season that's causing all of the horrible things to happen. So
Mhm. No, that sounds good. It's just like lacrosse seems insane because, like, who knows the rules to lacrosse? I don't.
people who play lacrosse know the rules to lacrosse.
Yeah, but no one else
But that's the
does.
thing. It's like very 2010s, my youngest brother, was on the lacrosse team in high
Okay,
school and stuff, so, like, I got a lot of lacrosse talk, from him, and I've actually
nice.
seen, I've seen one of the I think the championships for the Lacrosse World Series or whatever it's called, once when I was there, I had tickets to it and to go see it, but it was just it's it's an interesting game,
Okay.
Native American, origins, so
Yeah.
there you
Well,
go, full circle.
m maybe just my Texan is showing because, like, no one
Yeah.
cares about any sport but football here. So, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
really
very
care
much
about football, but
yeah.
we don't no one played lacrosse here. We didn't do that.
You're not gonna pick up lacrosse by osmosis in
No.
Texas, probably. Um, but yeah, you would in California, you would in New England for sure,
Yeah, that makes sense.
parts of Canada for sure, absolutely. You'll get
Got
that
it.
lacrosse knowledge just by being around it,
Right. No, yeah, that's not
or
happening.
by watching Teen Wolf.
Or yeah, sure. I guess I could learn more about lacrosse. Um, alright, any other werewolf movies that you wanted to mention or anything?
Um, no, I mean, you've got werewolves that pop up in a lot of different films, different horror films. Sometimes they're supporting characters. Sometimes they're used for flavor. I'm thinking of the Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, where there is a very famous werewolf-based sex scene. Um, they're also used. There's other films that are pretty popular, like Curse. I think it's The Curse with Christina Ricci.
Yeah. Kevin Williamson.
You've got yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And you've also got some other big movies that pop up here and there. The Wolfman has been remade multiple times. You've also got Wolf. I think you talked about that. That came out in '94. That one was also it was a pretty big deal because Jack
Yeah,
Nicholson becoming a werewolf was all over the place. At the time, it was very well publicized that it was
yeah.
going to be this big film. It's a serious horror film. It's so serious, and apparently it didn't do too well.
It's have you seen it? It's goofy. It's so goofy,
Yeah.
but it takes itself so seriously. Like, it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"What are we doing?" Like, it's not
Like
a good
why?
movie.
No, it's not. But it was given such like a huge push because it was Jack Nicholson in this
Yeah,
role, and you're like, yeah,
yeah,
okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. One of the big remakes for the original Wolfman, I guess it's kind of a remake, but Hammer Studios had their own called Curse of the Werewolf, and this one actually had Oliver Reed, who Oliver Reed, man, yeah. I mean, if you want
yeah.
if you want a sexy werewolf, there you go. The makeup for that, the actual werewolf makeup on that, similar to the original 1941 Wolfman, is not super, but you do get to see him shirtless a lot and with torn stuff, and yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's one of the ones I
there's that.
wanted to watch. I made a list and like I said, I watched it a bunch, but it's pretty rare. Usually I watch stuff and then I move on to the next thing.
Mhm.
But there are a few werewolf movies that I think I'm gonna watch.
Well, there was
The
one,
Wolfman.
just a couple of years ago too, Werewolves. Did you see that one?
Mhm.
Came out as basically it was an action film where apparently a percentage of the population turns into werewolves,
Right.
and then, a
There's like
year
a
later. Hmm?
yeah. There's a supermoon event.
Yeah, supermoon event that turns people into werewolves, and it's treated like almost like the purge, basically, where it's like this event happens, people turn into werewolves, and so many people die, but then they turn back into human, and so there's like this big thing where okay, we've got another one coming up, so either everybody has to be locked up, they need to make their houses safe from all the people who turn into werewolves and all of that. And it's anonymous. So like people who became the werewolves didn't want to reveal that they became werewolves because they didn't
Uh,
want to be locked up. But there are some that are volunteers. It's just all sorts of stuff. It is a wild movie. It's got a lot of CGI. It's a fun popcorn flick. Don't think too hard about it. It's basically
Okay,
it's The Purge with werewolves.
got it. Maybe I'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me again. It's always fun to talk to you. Glad we got to talk about so many werewolves. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you, where to listen and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. So like Ben had mentioned at the beginning, I am one of the hosts for the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the socials as Comic Book Bears or on Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. We have a YouTube channel where we have all of our old audio as well as live stream episodes. I'm also the host of the Bear Cave of Terror, and you can find us on the socials as Bear Cave of Terror, all one word. Um, at gmail.com, Instagram, Blue Sky. And on that one, I have a different guest host every week, and we talk about one of their favorite horror movies and pick it apart. And there are several episodes featuring Ben, especially the first four Scream movies we've covered, as well as Jennifer's Body and a few other ones. So I absolutely recommend listening to those because they were a lot of fun to do.
They were fun. And you have werewolf movies too that you've
We
talked
do.
about.
We've got both The Howling and An American Werewolf in London,
Nice.
both with guest host Craig Lance.
Okay, awesome. And my name's Ben. This has been Little Dead Aliens. You can find me on socials, Blue Sky, Instagram, Little Dead Aliens. I'm part of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcasting Collective. Check them out at glitterjaw.com to find more nerdy stuff about media. And if you get bit by some random wolf in the wilderness, you're probably a werewolf. So, like, go to a doctor or something and figure it out. Okay, bye. How do I